Welcome to Lead Poison.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Lead Poison podcast brought to you by youcanpaint.com.au. Head to youcanpaint.com.au for issue 1 of their how-to series, How to Paint Your House and Save Thousands. My name is Jack, your host, and today on the show I am joined by Jimmy DVATE. Jimmy is a world-caliber graffiti artist from Melbourne, Victoria, who has not only exceptional talent as a letter-based artist, but is top of the food chain painting aerosol realism. Jimmy has been involved in a magnitude of projects over the years and is known for his large-scale paintings across Australia, namely his work painting silos in regional communities. Jimmy's interest in flora, fauna and conservation of Australian wildlife is clearly apparent and does justice to the diverse environment he and I both call home. Having relied on his work ethic, technical development and passion for producing quality paintings, Jimmy understands fully what it takes to be a successful artist. If I may just veer off for a moment, even though the Lead Poison podcast is in its infancy, I've gained a sort of ad hoc education through talking to the guests on the show. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to get insight into artists and their lives. I'm hopeful that anyone listening is also finding value from the short discussions, and I guess the reason I'm making this point is because to me Jimmy is a true professional, but also a respected member of the graffiti community, not only here in Australia but all across the world, and in my opinion the best example of someone those of us early on in the journey can look to for inspiration. Regardless, I thoroughly enjoyed our discussion and I look forward to another one in the future. So without further ado, please welcome Jimmy DVATE. So Jimmy, man, I imagine like a lot of artists during the pandemic, I've been speaking to a lot of artists and graffiti artists and musicians and performers and just getting sort of their take on the pandemic and how it sort of affected their lives. I imagine you've been spending a lot of time in the studio working on your art.
I'd like to say yes. We've got actually got a 2-year-old daughter at the moment, so
Oh, nice.
yeah. Life's changed a lot in the last 2 years, I guess, for me and for her and for everyone. But yeah, for me, I guess lockdowns meant a lot more quality time with the family, which has been good. I still get into the studio when I can, but obviously, I mean, I travel a lot for my work. So when I get the chance to be at home, I do want to spend as much time with my family as possible. So yeah.
Yeah, beautiful, man. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
How's the sleep patterns going?
Yeah, no,
I
good,
guess
good.
by 2, it's not
Yeah,
too bad.
Touch wood, she's into the routine pretty good. Although yeah, now she's a toddler, so she's into everything and yeah, nonstop. You gotta watch everything out. So yeah.
She's getting her hands on your gear, on your paints and pens and things like that, making a mess.
Yep. Definitely got to change the whole setup.
Yeah, bro, I know about that for sure. Cleaning walls and repainting walls in the house, and it's craziness.
There's pretty much chalk on every surface in our house. So.
Yeah, chalk's all right, I guess. Like, as long as she doesn't get into the enamels or anything.
No. Just a few pens and crayons and that. But you know.
Yeah. So that must have been sort of at the start of this whole COVID thing when she came around, I guess.
Yeah, so she was. It's her birthday on the weekend. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So yeah, October 8th,
Beautiful.
2019. Was when it all changed, and so basically she spent half her life in lockdown, which is kind of crazy to think. So
yeah, man.
Yeah, it's definitely been a full on couple of years. It's been really hard as well with work. I guess my work, a lot of it's regional, so I'm based in Melbourne, which made it really hard last year. We had that ring of steel, so basically all my work got pushed back. Luckily, I'm in the position where my work doesn't just disappear, it just gets pushed back, which, you know, it's great because the work's still there, but it just puts so much more pressure on. And then, you know, I worked basically 6 months straight once we got out of lockdown last year, which meant all this time away from the family, and you know, it was really hard on that respect. And then my body just got caned as well because I was working so hard and just going job to job to job. And then now it's basically turning into the exact same thing now, where all the work I'm meant to be doing in the last couple of months is now getting pushed back. And as soon as we open up, hopefully in November, I'm just going to be slammed, you know, for the next few months. But you know, I just have to make sure I manage my time and don't book things in too soon after each other, because you know, it's working outdoors. There's always things you run into that you're not expecting, and
Yeah, like weather and things like that.
oh, mate, yeah. List never ends. Any job, there's always something that pops up, you know, weather or equipment, or you just, yeah.
Well, man, I'm really interested to ask you about some of the work you've been doing lately. I mean, it's incredible what you can achieve and the type of stuff that you're producing. It's really impressive. But sort of before I get into that, you know, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind asking you sort of about your foundational years, you know, as a graffiti artist and growing up in Melbourne. I know you're from Frankston, is that right?
Oh, Frankston Line. So I grew up around Caulfield, I guess. So I had the split there. So I had kind of access to Frankston and Dandelions. But I guess, probably spent most of my time on the Frankston Line. Went to school in McKinnon, and always traveling along there. And yeah, I mean, it's such an inspiration. There's so many good writers from that area. And yeah, just my house basically where we lived was on the train line. So walking to school every day, seeing graph and just being surrounded by it. And then growing up skating as well. So that also kind of got me into the same kind of areas and hanging out in the same spots as writers, and kind of went from there, I guess.
Was that your first sort of foray into art, you know, what you just described, or did you grow up in an artistic sort of place? You know, does it come from a family point of view, or?
Yeah, look, not necessarily, not specifically. I guess neither of my parents are massively artistic. They were really supportive, especially my mum. You know, she took me, you know, to lots of, you know, stuff on the holidays, different, you know, activities and stuff like that. So I was always exposed to a lot of different stuff, I guess. And yeah, and I was always into drawing as a kid, always, you know, copying cartoons and colouring in and all that kind of stuff. So it was definitely something I was always interested in. And yeah, but it wasn't a conscious choice, I guess, to kind of get into it. It just kind of happened, I guess. It was growing up skateboarding and surrounded by graffiti and hanging out with a few mates. Got our hands on an old copy of Hype magazine, an old graffiti magazine from Queensland. And
yeah, I've had I had Exit on the show just recently, so shout out to Hype magazine.
Yeah, classic. Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure anyone will tell you they've influenced a whole lot of people in Australia. Just back then there was no internet, there was nothing like that. So just being able to have a hard copy of, you know, quality graffiti that you could have in your house and, you know, replicate the pieces. I mean, we just sat around copying them and you know, trying to do our own stuff. But we had no idea. We didn't know any writers or anything like that. So yeah, we just eventually one night we're just like, fuck it, let's just go paint. And we just kind of, my mate worked at Coles and got quite a few spray cans and just went out and started painting. And that was it for the first kind of probably, I don't know, good half a year or so. It was just me and a couple of mates just kind of stuffing around, no real idea what we were doing. We didn't know anyone in the scene or anything like that. And then they kind of dropped off and I kind of stuck with it and met up with a couple of guys, and yeah, that rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, man, for sure. It's I think, you know, in those early days, I mean, obviously you've done amazing things with your graffiti and your art and things like that, but before you sort of know about the scene and other writers and everything like that, it's just so pure, like, you know what I mean? You're just fucking around, you're doing the worst possible pieces you could do, you know, everyone starts out, you know, but it's almost you're trying to capture that fun for the rest of sort of your graffiti career in a way. Like, it's an amazing time when you're young and running through drains and things like that.
Yeah, just and that exploration. Look, it's still with me now. I'm 40 years old. I still hop into drains, you know, and it's just, I think it's that feeling of adventure and exploration. And, you know, apart from the graffiti side of it, it's, you know, growing up, you know, I was reading adventure books and all that kind of stuff and watching movies, and, it's exciting. You're going to places that you're not meant to be necessarily, and you're seeing things that other people don't get to see, and different side of the city.
Yeah, it's exciting, man. Definitely. For me, I've done a sort of this same sort of early story as most graffiti writers and whatnot, just, mucking around with friends and things like that. But it was always the adventure for me that, I love just going through drains or going for bushwalks and finding walls. And the painting itself was almost secondary to that sort of, driving around with your mates and trying to find something. It's really cool, man.
For me, it's kind of gone full circle where it's, for years it was all about getting up and painting the most, visible spots and all that kind of stuff. And now I've come to the point where it's kind of now I paint the most invisible spots and invisible spots. And I kind of, it's more about, it's coming back to that adventure side of it. So, I'd rather go to an abandoned building that I've never been before and explore that than go to some wall that I've painted 100 times that I know, sweet. So it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, you must have ticked off a lot of walls in your days. You've probably been every which way around Melbourne, man.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I've been very fortunate.
Speaking of graffiti, obviously you've been involved since, the early 90s, late 90s.
Probably late 90s, I'd say, yeah.
Is there many massive changes that you've noticed in the culture itself, other writers and maybe the way that people operate in the scene itself, or is it sort of quite similar these days?
Look, I guess it's one of those things. It depends how far you look at it. If you look at it in a short span or a really long span, because I guess it has its cycles. And like when I started painting late 90s, it was kind of a bit of a lower point because a lot of writers before that had been busted and the cops had come down pretty hard, and the scene was kind of a bit in a low point. And then it kind of early 2000s, it was exploding again, and trains were getting painted every day, and it was just nuts. And then obviously stuff gets cracked down again, and it kind of changes. And I guess for me, the biggest difference probably is when they started painting all the train lines out. That really changed the motivation, I guess. For us, when we were growing up, it was all about painting on the train line. It was all about, trying to find a spot. You had to be, really inventive because the lines were full of burners and stuff that you couldn't go over. So you had to kind of make your own spots and try and come up with your own ideas and stuff like that. And, you could go and spend all night painting one piece on the train line because it was going to last for years, so that you had that mentality. Whereas now, because everything gets buffed, it's kids will go out now and paint 20 pieces in a night, or they'll go and spend 10 minutes in one spot and go smash. Like it's just a different mentality, I guess. And you don't have that. You're not surrounded by these high quality illegal pieces anymore. It's like if it's a good piece, generally now it's done legally, so the kids aren't they don't have that same respect that we used to do for like burners, that because burners used to be done on the train line at night, whereas now burners get done legally, I guess. So there's that different kind of different aspect to it now. And everything's changed. You can't spend 3 hours in a train yard easily anymore. You can you're getting 5-10 minutes on a train. So obviously that changes the style that you're painting and all that kind of stuff too. So
yeah, man, that's a really good point. It's I guess the shift is the quality versus quantity shift is probably with the lack of time and things like that, it's probably shifting more towards quantity over quality.
Yeah, exactly. And it's it's the age of Instagram, it's social media, stuff like that. So everyone's got an opinion, it's just totally different than the way it used to be.
Yeah, man. No, I can imagine.
It's like you can just contact you can contact some writer that you've looked up to for years just with a touch of a button now. Where for us, I had to travel to Europe to meet dudes that I wanted to paint. Yeah,
100%, man. I mean, it's good. It's one of those things that's sort of like a balance, isn't it? Because it's good in some ways and bad in other ways, and I guess it depends on how you look at it. But
you just got to evolve, and you got to kind of move with the times, I guess. Otherwise, you're just going to get bitter and twisted.
yeah, and you don't want to be that for sure.
No, that's it, man. That's it.
Yeah. So I mean, man, I grew up in Sydney and up and down the East Coast. I spent a little bit of time in Melbourne, but not a whole lot. And I wasn't doing heaps of art when I was there anyways. I was sort of just floating around. But, Melbourne's known for some of the best graffiti writers in the world. I mean, yourself included. It's got an amazing reputation for street art, graffiti, artists in general, even not even behind the brush, like just performers and music. It's an incredible city. I mean, do you have any thoughts on why Melbourne itself is that way? Is there something about the city that sort of has an emphasis on artists and things like that, or is it just a coincidence?
Yeah, good question, man. It's something I guess I haven't really thought too much about. It's I've kind of thought about it with other cities, but it's not so much my own.
It's pretty incredible, isn't it? Because I mean, when you look at a lot of especially graffiti, I mean, it's amazing what Melbourne is able to achieve on a world stage. Like it's unbelievable.
Look, I guess it's, I mean, obviously there's millions of factors that are involved in it, but, I mean, the setup of Melbourne, the way it's built, I guess it's, that central point with all the lines going out, it wasn't ever buffed. I guess that whole buff thing comes into it, like Sydney, growing up in the late 90s, Sydney was always getting buffed brown, like that was, whereas Melbourne, we still had full coloured tracksides running until probably, I don't know, mid 2000s or late 2000s, so that's probably a big difference, I guess. So Sydney copped that quantity over quality mentality a bit earlier than Melbourne, maybe because the buff came earlier to Sydney.
Interesting.
I mean, that's just a theory.
Yeah. Just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
That makes sense though, doesn't it? I mean, even the city itself, like Sydney, just the way the city is in comparison to Melbourne, I think Melbourne lends itself much more to artists having more spaces. And, I don't know how it is from a government level. I mean, or even a community project sort of level. You could probably speak a lot to that, but Sydney doesn't have, from my experience, doesn't have a lot of avenues for artists to sort of continue their work. A lot of it, it's very sort of business orientated. There is a lot of great artists here and a lot of people doing good things, but obviously Melbourne is just a melting pot.
And look, I guess it's that thing where like I often tell people, whatever you paint that's the kind of work you're going to get. So if you paint a lot of portraits, you're going to get hit up to paint a lot of portraits. If you paint a lot of animals, you're going to get hit up to paint a lot of animals. So one thing attracts another. So I think also the fact that Sydney's known as being kind of the business corporate centre and Melbourne's kind of known as the art centre, that obviously attracts those kind of people to those places initially, as well as the fact that it is what it is. So that then builds on those aspects as well. If I running a commercial mural business, I've got lots of mates that do it. Most of their work's in Sydney because it's where a lot of the bigger commercial offices are and all that kind of stuff. So there's probably more money in murals in Sydney than there is in Melbourne because there's more corporate jobs there. But then in Melbourne, there's maybe more, options for being artistic, I guess. I don't know, but it's it's interesting, man. It's one of those things. I mean, we've got the laneways as well in Melbourne. That's something that lends itself to graffiti, I guess. You've got that kind of cut through thing where you can stay off the main street and lurk around a bit.
Are those lanes like you're speaking about sort of Hosier Lane and?
Oh, not even, man. Just in the suburbs in general, there's pretty much lanes behind most houses in Melbourne. I mean, I'm sure it's probably Sydney as well, but it's just from back in the days when they used to pick up the shit from behind your house and milk deliveries and all that kind of stuff. So
a lot of those spaces, can you paint them sort of without getting in too much grief?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up painting in laneways before I painted train lines, really, because that's the lane. Laneways, I guess they're the spots you'd cut through to smoke ciggies or smoke weed. As like it was those kind of spots that they're out of the public eye. They're the backs of people's houses. So I mean, obviously, a lot of times you'd be sitting there doing your thing and someone would open a roller door and chase you out or whatever. But, it was just that kind of hidden hidden world, I guess, where you weren't in the public's view.
Yeah, for sure, man. Good places to hang out.
Yeah, totally, man. Totally. But look, I guess, every city's got its own positives and negatives for art and culture and stuff like that. And, for me, Melbourne's always got this reputation. It's like the street art capital and all this stuff, but it's like there's not even a legal wall to paint in Melbourne. Like technically Hosier Lane you're meant to get permission for. Like there's not really, it's not like every council's got a spot where kids can just go and paint, like, which is crazy, man. Like,
do you think that, kind of talking on that topic, graffiti obviously comes from, where it comes from, and obviously it's got a massive illegal aspect to it, and in a lot of ways that's what creates the art. I think if graffiti was fully legal and you could just do whatever you want, it wouldn't be the way that it is. But
for sure,
as a bona fide artist, and you cemented your career as an artist, do you think that there could be more sort of government involvement with giving people more legal spaces to paint, or do you think that would actually be a negative thing to do?
No, I think it would. I mean, regardless of what you do, dudes are still going to go and paint illegally. Like, it's, I've learned from many years of trying to legitimize graffiti and trying to give not mainstream, but give give other options for writers other than just doing illegal graph. But I mean, graffiti's a beast. You can't fight it. You can't control it. Whatever you do, you can put on the most amazing graph event and invite every single writer that you know, and there'll still be a handful of dudes that are going to piss and moan because either they didn't get invited or they think graffiti should never be, you can't, there's no one side that's going to be happy with anything. So yeah, and graffiti's that's why it's so cool and why it's so awesome, is the fact that it has no rules, and you can't restrain it, and you can't control it. And there's always going to be dudes out there going and who just want to tag and destroy stuff, and they don't actually care about anything else. So you can't, you're never going to change those opinions, but by providing legal spots or opportunities for young artists, just gives people more opportunities, really. Like, I don't think there's ever going to be enough legal walls for it to really change anything. It's I mean, and even now, like, especially in Melbourne, there's a huge backlash against legal stuff. Like when I was growing up, if you got a wall that was covered in tags and you wanted to do a burner on it, you just did it. Like, you didn't think twice. But now it's like, this kid's got to throw up on it. Maybe I won't go over it now because he'll come back and do throw ups over the production we do. Which is like, it's a totally different thing. You would never think that 10 years ago, but yeah, it's just the way it changes.
How you just mentioned before, sort of legitimizing graffiti. You've got obviously a lot of talent, and but you come from that graffiti world. Was it difficult sort of jumping that gap between sort of making a career out of art and coming from a world where it might be frowned upon to do something that should not be? A lot of people look upon graffiti as it should, as you said before, paint panels or paint trains, and it's not really, you shouldn't really monetize it. I disagree with that. I think if you're talented, you should go for whatever you think you should go for. And it's great that graffiti artists are making careers out of their art. And, some of the stuff, once you do jump that gap, it's incredible what you're able to achieve, the type of work and the caliber of work that you're trying to achieve. But was it difficult bridging that gap when you were younger? Did you have some doubt that it might be hard to do?
No, I guess, I mean, I was probably lucky when we started doing like the more commercial side of it. It wasn't really a thing like it is now. It wasn't, street art wasn't even a word that people really used. It was just like, oh, you're just writers who are doing other stuff. Like, it wasn't this big divide like it is now, I guess. So it's probably a bit different than it is now. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was just a natural progression. I was always believed in trying to do something I loved as a career. So it was never a thing that I had in my mind when I was doing pieces on the lines and stuff, that, oh, this one day I'm going to make this into a career. But I also definitely took it seriously enough where it was such an important part of my life. And, for many years, graph was everything to me. So, I lived, breathed, slept graph, like it was just everything. So obviously that's going to direct you some way with how your life goes. And, I wanted to go to art school, but my mum taught me to go into uni instead to do graphic design. So went to do that, but that's all from graffiti. And, I was all, I spent years, I guess, being a graphic designer and just being not super happy when we moved to London, worked there. But no, I was always doing graffiti, but it was never a career until I kind of came back and got a few jobs where I was like, hey, hang on a second, I'm making enough money here where I don't necessarily have to do freelance design anymore. And, I just busted my ass for probably 5 or 10 years painting everything and anything that came along. Signage, kids' bedrooms, portraits, whatever. But at the same time, I was also kind of developing this nature-based stuff where, I guess it was working a lot for councils and stuff. So you kind of either had the choice of going down a historic route or a flora and fauna-based route because nothing else was really going to get ticked off, because especially back then, councils were really conservative and super scared of putting anything on a wall that they thought was going to get complained about. So I guess that kind of steered me in that direction as well. I mean, I grew up camping and going into the bush and exploring, so I was always into nature, and then started doing a few walls like that and started researching areas and just really got into it. And then it's kind of the last 5 or 10 years, probably 6 or 7 years now, I've probably basically focused just on my flora and fauna based work, and it's gone really well. But for years I was trying to incorporate my graph into it as well, and I was really pushing that like graph angle and trying to like include it in any job I could. And then I kind of got to the point where I was like, hang on a second, am I doing something just for the sake of it, where I'm actually starting to not enjoy doing my graph as well because it's becoming a job? And should I just be pushing the flora and fauna stuff as my career and the graph as something that's just for me and for me to do with my friends? And that's, I guess, and that also helped because I was doing a lot of regional work, doing silos and stuff like that. You can't really incorporate graph into it because it just doesn't, it's never going to fly with these small country towns. Like, I'd love to do, like, don't get me wrong, I'd love to do a silo with graph in it, but at the moment anyway, it's just a bit of an ask for these people. I mean, you kind of got to take the ego out when you do these jobs because I come back to Melbourne, they got to live there, so they they got to deal with it every day. So it's a bit different. So I kind of made that separation a few years ago, and it's been really good. I mean, since I've had a kid, obviously I can't paint as much graph as I'd like to because that's not really work and it's not bringing in money, and it's harder for me to justify spending a day doing a piece when I could be at home with my daughter. But that'll obviously change a bit once she starts going to school and stuff. There'll be a bit more time freed up for me to get back into doing graph again. But look, and it's, if I'm working too much and I don't do graph, it really starts to affect me. It's because like it's definitely a mindfulness thing. It's like a mental break when you're doing a piece or something like that. Like the realism stuff, although I love it, it's like it's super stressful and it's real. You just have to concentrate super hard. Whereas graph, it's a bit more fluid, and it's, I guess you're not, it's coming a bit more internally than it is. You're not, using a reference or anything like that. So it's a different. You're in a different mind state, and it's I find it really, really relaxing.
Where did you start picking up that sort of realism style? Did that run parallel to your graffiti, or did you pick that up sort of later on?
No, so that was probably year 8, I think, year 9. I did an airbrush class at high school. Like we had like a graphic design kind of subject, and this dude came in and did like an airbrush course for the day, and I did really well at that, and kind of won this like competition thing where I got like a 1 week a spot in like a 1 week course that this dude was running on the school holidays. And yeah, it's called Airbrush Venturi. Yeah, he taught me a lot, taught me how to do realism basically with an airbrush, and how to use a grid and how to use a projector and all those kind of techniques. And yeah, I guess from there that kind of really stuck with me, and just that basis of working from dark to light, and yeah, kind of separating the image and trying to look at it in small components and not get overwhelmed by the whole big image. And yeah, and I mean, look, I did a lot of really crappy photorealisms as well, don't get me wrong. Look, I'm definitely not one of those artists that was just like supernaturally gifted. I still reckon I can't draw very well. Like, it's
Please, come on.
But look, like, I'm not one of those dudes.
You should see my drawings, bro.
there's artists out there where you're like, oh man, draw a dog riding a hippopotamus with a bike and a candle and a hat, and they'll just draw it and it'll be fucking amazing. I'm not that artist. I need reference. Like, I need, yeah, it's I'll have to work really hard at it. Even with my graph, like, probably first 5-10 years, I was the biggest toy. Like, my pieces were just horrible, and it took me a long time to develop my style. And I guess that's something, one of the reasons probably why I stuck with it so long, is because I did have to work so hard at it. Whereas I've seen a lot of artists that are super talented and just like naturally gifted, but it comes too easy for them, so they just move on to something else.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, man. You know, like I've got kids as well, and I often think, you know, you don't want to rely on your natural born talent too much, because I think what you're explaining is learning work ethic, dedication, discipline, and they're the real backbones of anything important in your life, especially creativity. If something comes really easily, you know, you'll be so much quicker to just give it up in a way.
Yeah, which is hard, because you see these guys, you're like, oh man, I wish I had that, like, half as much of that natural gift that you do, but yeah, a year later they're gone, you know.
Yeah, so they give it up and they'll pick something else up maybe that they're really good at too, and then they might move on from that too. So yeah, that's a really good point, man. I think discipline, you know, a lot of the guys I've been talking to, that discipline is I think from a creative point of view, you know, discipline isn't really a big talking point, you know, because a lot of artists, they're free and they sort of just come and go with it, and it just comes to them. But if you can integrate discipline and those types of things and work ethic into your creativity, man, you can go so much further. And I mean, you're a perfect example of that, man. It's incredible.
That's the only way that I feel, the way that I've got my success, and the way whenever I do workshops with the kids and stuff, and I tell them, like, you pick anything in this world you want to do and you give it 120%, you'll be really successful. Like, it's just how it works. And, you know, there might be some hurdles here and there, but, you know, if you're 100% dedicated to something, you'll always come out on top. And, you know, it's even with my graph, like, you know, we do walls, and I'd always be the one that wanted to come back the next day and add a bit more, or, you know, stay that extra hour, or, you know, whatever it was. Like, my first graph partner that I had, that we painted with all the time, we'd you know, be doing pieces, and he'd just be like, I'm done, man, I'm going to go. I'd be like, man, you haven't even done your background yet. And he'd be like, I can't be bothered, man. I'm like, I'll just do it for you. So, like, I started doing his backgrounds for him. And, you know, then, like, I'd be like, oh, we'll do a character as well, man. So I'll just do the character. And, you know, it's just like, you're just putting in that extra effort, and the extra 10% is what makes it stand out amongst all the other stuff, you know?
Totally, man. And over time, that added time, you know, honing your craft and things like that pays off dividends, you know, over years and years. But it sounds like you've obviously got a massive passion for creating art too, so that helps as well.
Oh, I do, for sure. It's yeah, as I said, I feel a bit weird when I'm not creating, and I guess for me, lockdown's been hardest because most of my time has been spent on the computer doing designs and stuff like that without actually getting to paint. So it's yeah, it's hard. And I guess it's, especially with the kid now, it's that whole free artistic, you know, sitting down and just doing a canvas for the sake of it is harder to find the time for that, because it's a harder thing to justify. Whereas if I'm sitting on the computer doing a design, it's like, yeah, I'm charging this person for this design, so it's all good. But if I'm just sitting there doing a graph canvas, it's like, oh, maybe I should be at home, you know. But yeah, so it's definitely.
I totally understand that, man. I really struggled I've got a 5-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son, and I really struggled for the first couple of years, just with exactly what you said, sort of not feeling selfish, but at the same time respecting the fact that I needed to sort of fulfill my creativity and things like that. And it's a real tug of war, man. And
totally, because you need to feel good about yourself, and you need to be, fulfilling your own stuff to be there for your kids too.
Exactly.
You can't just be there and hating the fact that you're there because you want to be somewhere else. That doesn't work either. So it's like, yeah.
I think what I've found now is that now that my daughter's 5, I just bring her along,
Totally.
Lately I'm like, all right, I want to do some art out. I got a little sort of area in the backyard, and I'll just go, put on the paint shirt for it, put on some painting clothes on her, and I'll just get her to help me. And it just turns out chaotic and it's a mess, but I'm finding it's sort of making that balance a little bit easier. The little guy, like 2-year-old, he'll pick up a thing of paint and just pour it on the floor.
Yeah.
Spray paint, almost hit his eyes and whatnot. But yeah, it's tough, man.
At that stage, man, everything goes in the mouth. Oh
man, it's just constant panic attacks, man. So you mentioned sort of, obviously a lot of your work, you paint heaps of animals, man, and they are big and small, like a lot of them big. I'm looking at some of your work now, man. It's it's incredible. I've been looking at a lot of silo artists and that sort of realm of art, and I didn't really know that there was such a big I don't know what you call it, but there's a lot of people doing silos. There's not a huge amount, but there is a few guys doing them, and they're doing quite a few, and they're all in the sort of rural communities, and it's really amazing to see what they're able to pull off on these silos. But speaking of the animals in particular, I mean, you've got a passion for, I mean, where did that interest come? You said that, it's good to be able to provide art that's going to be acceptable to some of these people that might not understand graffiti, but do you enjoy painting animals yourself? I mean, a lot of them are native to Australia. Is that something that interests you?
Yeah, look, I mean, I was always, as I said, I always grew up camping. My mum always took me to national parks and did, activities and stuff on the school holidays. And I was always into nature, always into animals. And the more I've kind of grown up and been a bit more aware of what's going on in the world and all that kind of stuff, we live in such an amazing country. We have the most fantastic flora and fauna like nowhere else in the world. We're so lucky, and we're just totally screwing it all up. So for me now, it's become a thing where I do so much research into the area that I'm painting in to try and find species that are either endangered or threatened or iconic, just to try and raise a bit of awareness, trying to make these animals cool again, like it's whatever I can do basically for me to try and encourage younger kids to get into nature and try and, support this planet a bit and, just try and do something to help. So, and look, I guess it's addictive. The more you work on these projects, the more you just want to do more. And like it's obviously for me financially, it's not the route I would have taken if I want to buy a house in Melbourne or something like that. Like I'm not earning enough, but the reward that I get from working with, these conservation groups and small charity groups and, national parks and all this kind of stuff, it's totally different thing. Like it's, like a lot of these things, I find it so hard to even charge these people money because what they're doing is so amazing. And the fact that I get to work with them and paint some murals that try and raise a bit of awareness is, it's super rewarding. And as you said, with the silo stuff, you're doing these small communities and you go back a year later and the whole joint's just pumping and there's cars everywhere and, the pub's hiring new staff and, they're thinking of opening a cafe and it's like, a year before this town was dead and the pub was about to shut and everything had moved, everyone was moving away. And it's just crazy what like a bit of art on a silo can do, for a town. It's nuts. And it's fantastic that it's starting to spread around a bit more. And A lot of other towns are getting on board and stuff like that. And look, my hope is that will open it up to then, let it be a bit more creative and a bit, some of these towns get something a bit different, and
maybe get some letter-based art in there.
Yeah, that'd be great. Or even just some art that's not, super conservative. But it's hard. It is what it is. But me, the fact that I get approached for silos all the time, and if they don't want flora and fauna based stuff, I just say, look, I'm not the person for you. And look, I do that with a lot of my work now. If it's a job that's not a good fit for me, I'll just pass it on to someone else I know, or give them the recommendations and stuff like that. And that's an amazing position to be in. The fact that I can turn down work, whereas 5-10 years ago I was just taking everything that came on. But yeah, I guess that's just what you want with your career. You want to grow and get to that point at some stage. And as I say to a lot of artists, what I said to you before, like what you paint is what the work you get. So now that probably last 5 or 6 years, all I've really painted is flora and fauna based work, and anything I put on social media, even though I might occasionally do a corporate job or something like that, just because it might be really good cash or whatever, I won't post that on my social media. So I'm not getting those jobs. I'm just getting the flora and fauna based work. I'm just getting, the stuff that I want. So yeah, what you put out into the world is what comes back to you.
Yeah, that's very true. That's a really good point. Do you remember your first silo that you painted? I mean, how was that transition? Did you do something small, bigger, and then you got to a silo? Because some of this stuff is huge, man.
Look, and that's what I also say to guys. Like a lot of people, like, oh, how can I paint it? I really want opportunities. How can I make this? How come I can't get a silo to paint? And for me, like a lot of my first walls, we just went and hired a scissor lift ourselves. Like we got a legal wall. Like, oh, cool, we could go pretty high on this. Let's go hire a scissor lift. We've found a joint that's just like a small hire joint. It's not one of the big name joints. It was like $100 for a little electric scissor. Comes with a trailer. You chuck it on the back of your car and pick it up early on Saturday morning, and they were closed Sunday. So you return it on Monday morning, and you only pay $100. And it was like, a couple of us chuck in. It's like, that's nothing, man. Like $100 is nothing. So yeah, that was, I guess, how it started for me doing larger scale stuff. Because I mean, obviously you can work off ladders and that's all good, but at some point it's just physically it's just too much, and you want to get a bit higher and do a bit bigger. So
you can't hold many cans up on a ladder.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a nightmare. So yeah, probably my first 5 or 10 big things were just us doing stuff off our own bat and making it happen. And then, people started talking, oh, Jimmy does big stuff. He can, do big things. Oh, you want to have a go at this project, blah, blah, blah. And it just goes from there. It flows on. And then invited to do a few mural festivals and did a few big walls for those. And then, silo kind of came next. And yeah, I'd love to do something really big next.
Bigger than a silo. Does it get much bigger than a silo? I mean, how much bigger can you go? Maybe like Sabre in the canals there.
Big skyscrapers with a swing stage.
Yeah, true. Yeah, no, that'd be exciting, man.
I'm pretty petrified of heights, but I am. I do deal with it.
Really?
Yeah, man. I suck. But
how do you go off in the cherry pickers then?
I just deal with it. Like I've got a few mental things where I'd go. Like basically, if you go right to the top at the start and then drop a meter, you suddenly just feel all right. So it's like
it's all relative.
Yeah, it's all relative. It's just got to trick your mind. Yeah, a lot of different things. But
how do you go with? I mean, something that I've asked. I had a guy on John Murray, and he's done a few silos out in northwestern New South Wales and Burke and things like that. And one thing I asked him and another guy that helped him, Lucas Casper, was how do you deal with the scale? Like how on earth? Sometimes I paint a wall, just a regular wall, and I've got a wall near my house that I can't really go backwards too much on, and I find it really difficult to deal with that. I mean, is that something you just learn over time? Do you grid up these giant silos?
Yeah, so I've been using a grid probably since I started doing commercial work. I mean, I used to use a projector here and there, but I always prefer to grid. I just I just don't. I like being able to just do it anytime, anywhere. I don't have to deal with having to be dark or use power or any crap like that with a projector. And yeah, I guess it also enabled me to mentally compartmentalize it into squares. So stuff, if I'm ever struggling, I always just go back to just painting it square by square by square by square, and literally paint the thing like a printer, where I'm just all I'm focusing on is this tiny little space at one, so you're not looking at this 50-meter wall. You're not getting overwhelmed by this entire thing that you're just trying to paint, and you just got to trust your technique and know that if you're doing the right thing in the right square, when you stand back, it's going to work.
Yeah, true.
Basically, like.
So have you got an image on your phone or something, and you're looking at that?
No, or I absolutely hate working off my phone. That's why I don't do like the overlay technique a lot of guys do, where they'll just do random marks on the wall and overlay the image over that. Just basically the same thing as a grid, but they reckon it's a bit quicker. But for me, I'm so used to doing grids now and working off grids that I can do them so fast. And I just have my printout. It's just a piece of paper. Like, I don't have to worry about it, getting the battery's not going to run out. Like, if I drop it, it's not going to smash. Like, if the sun's on me, I don't have, like, the worst is trying to paint when the sun's glaring on your phone. You can't even see it. Like, it's just so annoying. And yeah, look, I just have my printouts and just keep it old school, I guess. And it's just the way I like to work.
Well, it's working, man. I mean, you must be doing something right, because.
Oh, that's it. Like, it's the thing. Like, why mess with something that works? Like, I do the overlay technique if I'm doing like a small little wall for fun on it. If I just download an image and just want to smash it on a wall real quick, I'll just do that overlay thing and just paint off my phone. That's fine. But for any jobs, I'll just work off grids. And and especially like with a stylo, you can't. It depends, obviously, how you want to treat it. Some dudes project. If you want to project, though, it's only going to work from that spot where you project it. Everywhere else is going to look weird as fuck, because it's going to just warp out and do all this weird stuff. So I kind of treat them. A mate told me to just think about, just treat them like a tattoo. Like, if you're getting your arm tattooed, you don't want the tattoo's not visible from the whole thing's not visible from one spot. It wraps around, just treat the silo like that and just have it wrap around, and what you view from one bit, you don't necessarily see from the other bit, but whatever, it's just, that's how it is. So, and the grid works perfectly for that. So, and then especially, I mean, if you got your measurements, as I said, like, I'm not, like, I am artistic, but I've also got a very kind of methodical brain as well. So I like, problem solving and having my grid. I have, like, I'll number it like a street directory. So I have like 1, 2, 3, 4 at the top and blah, blah, blah. So I number each square. So I know exactly where I am on my design at any time and all that kind of stuff. And it's, the same with any job. If you prepare it well and you do that prep work well, it's everything just runs smooth, because as soon as you've done that grid, you've got that sketch up on there, like, the hard, not the hard bit, but like the scary bit's kind of done, because now all you really have to worry about is rendering it, and like, which is still hard, and like, there's a lot of challenge to that, but you're not trying to fix proportions on the fly, or like,
You've got a good foundation, I guess. It's easy.
Yeah,
go through the job.
Whatever you're painting is going to look right at the end, because the SketchUp's right, because you've done it, you've taken the time to do it properly. And and as I said, look, I'm not one of those. I wish I was one of those dudes that could just rock up to a wall and draw the most amazing portrait just off the top of my head. And look, I probably could if I practiced and practiced, but I'm just not naturally one of those guys that can just do that. So, and especially at the scale of a silo, like, I don't even know I don't think you could just draw it straight on there. Like,
yeah, it'd be hard, wouldn't it?
Especially if you're painting realism. Like, obviously certain styles, depending on the type of artist you are, would work. But yeah, for me, it's and also I'm trying to do justice to my model, because a lot of the times I'm working with a photographer, or I've taken the photo myself, or I'm connected to the animal really because I've researched it so much. And I'm working with a conservation group who spent their lives dedicated to this animal. So it's like I put all this pressure on myself to like really nail this animal and make it the best representation that I can of this animal. So that's why I guess using the grid as well, it means that I can just really nail down that detail and color and all that kind of stuff.
What's the response from the community? I mean, are you it sounds like you've got a lot of involvement in the towns that you're going to, and by the looks of them, a lot of them are pretty rural. Do you have, you mentioned conservation groups and things like that. Do you stay in the town while you do them?
Yeah. So, I mean, Gurumbat, where I did my first silo, that's basically like a second home to us now. Been back there 4 years in a row. They keep getting me back to paint more stuff because, every time we do something new there, it just brings more people in. It just puts them back into the media again. It gives them more publicity, and that little town's just pumping. It's got the best little pub, and they're just killing it. And it's just so good to see. And we've got some of the people that organise it have a farm there that we stay at. That's just, we keep in contact with them. So it's definitely, it's more than just a business relationship. Definitely, it's something really special that you get. And a lot of these towns, especially when I do silos, pretty much every town I've done a silo in, we still keep in contact with some of the organisers. And if I'm ever in that area, I'll pop past. And it's you spend a month, I guess, somewhere. You kind of you don't become a local by any means, but you definitely
a familiar face, aren't you, by the end of it?
for sure,
I would imagine.
Sure. Yeah, especially, and they're so a lot of these towns are so small. Like everyone's into everyone's business. Like everyone knows everyone.
Yeah, I guess it'd be a big thing. You coming into town and doing such an amazing piece of artwork, it'd be a big talking point.
Oh, for sure. Plus, because you're the out of towner, you kind of get taken in by all the groups. So you kind of get all the goss. You get like, you really like, because everyone's like, oh, someone who's like, I can just like spill my guts to, who doesn't know everyone else, like.
Yeah, totally.
So you're like, oh man, it's hectic. You get, I mean, sometimes it's a bit too much because you're just like, I just want to paint, man. I don't want to know about all this.
Jump in the cherry picker, mate. We'll go up and have a chat.
Oh man, funny as, yeah. But it's really special, and it's so rewarding, and it's just, look, I love painting in the city and stuff, but nothing. It's just, it's just such a great experience for me, and just being able to, I mean, sometimes, especially out there in the mornings, you get a couple of hours with just, you won't see a single person, and as an artist painting in the street, that's just like, that's gold. You never get that in the city, man.
Do you listen to music while you do those big ones? You got headphones on, things like that?
Yep.
Yeah, that would help, man, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Just helps you get in the zone. I mean, that's definitely, I mean, people talk about it, but especially with realism, I get in this zone where it's, because you're concentrating so hard, you just, I mean, I could have 100 people standing a meter behind me and I wouldn't even know. Like, it's crazy. Yeah.
Do a lot of kids, I imagine a lot of kids come and watch and things like that, or depending on the location, I guess, but
yeah.
People come and spectate?
Yep. I mean, look, I guess before we had the kid, it was really good because my wife works with me. So she's an amazing talker. Like, she loves talking to people and chatting and stuff. So she was just running PR like a legend. So I was just basically able to pretty much just paint most jobs we did. I was just able to just paint with my headphones on, and she'd just chat to everyone and fill them in and stuff. But now
not anymore though. You gotta handle everyone yourself.
So now I bring an assistant with me.
Get a big stick and start prodding them off.
So I bring an assistant with me now who
oh, really nice.
Gets cops most of the chat, but look, it's all part of it. It's public art. You got to interact with the public, I guess. So it's one of those things. Some days are easier than others.
I guess it means so much to those towns that you're probably happy to conversate and hear people's stories and things like that. Because, you know, it'd be quite an event to have something like that put in your little town when there's, you know, not a lot happening in a lot of those places.
It's nuts. It's nuts. Like, yeah, like Gurumba, for instance, they have like a roster. So each day different people will bring us morning tea and different people will bring us lunch. So, and they're all fighting to make the best slices. And like I put on like 10 kilos every time I do one. It's nuts.
Fully.
It's the best though. Like, it's, yeah, country hospitality, man. It's crazy. It's it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, man. A good sort of salt of the earth people that live outside of the major cities, and obviously there's some in the major cities too, but you know, a lot more personal, I find.
It's just different. It's way more life, just way chiller and laid back, and yeah, there's no traffic, and it's just, yeah, it's nice.
So you mentioned that, you know, you had some sort of formal training in graphic design, and you did a little bit of work being a graphic designer, but do those skills, like from Monash University, do they transfer to your work that you're doing now?
Yeah, look, I mean, I probably could have saved myself a lot of money and just gone to TAFE and done a design course, but I mean, who knows, man? Because uni's one of those things. It's hard because I mean, they reckon they're teaching you how to think, not necessarily teaching you practical skills. So, you know, you come out of, especially with design, you come out of uni not necessarily very employable because you don't necessarily know how to use a printer or know how to set up files to do stuff properly. You know, like but you're trained to think maybe a bit outside the box or stuff like that. But then I don't know if that's just something people have in them anyway. So yeah, I mean, like when I got out of uni, I couldn't get a job in design. I ended up working at a printers and pre-press for a couple of years, just so then I had that back end experience. Which if you're running a design business, that's like, you need people that know how to set files up for print and aren't going to stuff up a $10,000 print run because they don't know what they're doing. So yeah, and it's not like you're going to walk into a design job and instantly be given creative control on brief. So that whole creative thinking thing that you get from uni is great, but it's not necessarily that applicable to the real world when you're actually trying to work. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't get a job at all in design, and it wasn't until we moved to London 2007, just kind of spur of the moment thing, and just was like, why not? And kind of just asked my way into a job. A friend of a friend was running his own studio, and he was working for some big multinational and didn't have time to really devote to his own clients. So he needed someone to kind of hold the base for him. And I was like, yeah, man, I've got all this experience and I know all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, cool, go for it. And yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. Google was my best friend. I was like, how do I do this? How do I do this? And he was a weird designer, man, because he built everything in Photoshop with even like, you know, magazines and stuff. So I was like, man, this is
really good. It didn't have InDesign.
No, he had InDesign, he just didn't use it. And I was like, man, like, this is just nuts, man. So I like kind of redid his business for him a bit, because I was just Googling shit and learning like, oh, this is how you actually meant to do a magazine. And yeah, so I kind of learned a lot. And then we came back to Melbourne, I was able to get work a bit easier. But yeah, luckily enough, didn't have to do that for too long. But I mean, I still use my design skills every day. Being professional, I think, is super important as an artist, because as you said, people have that impression of artists that we're just this flighty kind of like off with the fairies all the time. And, you know, which is true, man. I know some artists that it's super hard for them to even get an invoice done. You know, they really struggle with that shit. But especially if you want to charge someone a lot of money for a job, being able to like show them what you're going to deliver because you've got the skills to be able to mock it up on their wall and, you know, make them actually, yeah, because a lot of people are really visual and they can't understand if you're just explaining something to them without them actually seeing it. So yeah, having the skills to be able to just kind of mock something up like that and just come across really professional, I think makes a big difference.
Yeah, it goes a long way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's kind of a hard question to answer, but would you recommend to younger artists that university is a good way to go? You mentioned TAFE and things like that. I mean,
It's hard, man.
is it a viable thing to do, to go to university and do creative courses and things like that?
For sure. Look, I mean, I'll probably would have preferred to go into art school, but then, or do a fine arts degree. But at the same time, that would have definitely steered me in a different direction into that real gallery. It's a different world, I guess. Which I've kind of funny because I kind of come back into it now because a lot of street art now is getting done by people who are coming straight out of art school, not coming from a graffiti background. So it's like suddenly I'm interacting again with these, kind of like it's gone all full circle, which is kind of funny. But look, I guess you just got to do what makes you happy, and it's a hard question, man, because uni's definitely not for everyone, but look, I definitely got a lot out of it. It's not something that I think it should be free. I've still got to, I don't know how much it's up to now because they keep charging me interest on it, but it's almost up to 20 grand hex debt.
Yeah.
Which is,
it's hard, it's hard to just whack a bill on a kid like that. So
yeah, well, that's it. It's another, it's another thing where I don't really want to get into the whole politics of like generational disadvantage, but
my old girl did journalism at Curtin University in Perth, and when she was at university, it was free.
Yeah, my mum did uni for free. My older sister did uni for free. They all bought houses when they were 30 grand a house, and now,
different times, man. You really got to, that's why I got so much respect for people like you and artists that manage to, obviously you're extremely talented, but from what you've been telling me, you're really dedicated, and the work ethic is huge, man. It's something that I notice. If an artist can manage to figure out how to have work ethic, they can go a long way. And I respect, in this day and age, man, I got a massive amount of respect for artists that can live, quote unquote, live off their art, because it's tough. You come out of uni or whatever you're doing, you got massive bills, and kids start coming on the scene, and it's difficult. And massive amount of respect for anyone that can even make $10 off their art.
Yeah, dude, it's tough. It is tough, but it's so rewarding too. And anything you put something, the more you put into something, the more you get out of it. So
totally, man. 100%. You mentioned before that you did workshops. Tell me a little bit about that. You do workshops with younger guys and girls, or?
Yeah, I did heaps in my time. I don't touch them with a 10-foot pole now, but
yeah. Why is that?
Oh, look, it's
hard.
They're very hard. They're a lot of work. I'm not a people person. I'm definitely would rather just be painting than talking to people. So
are we talking like graffiti workshops?
Yeah, pretty much graffiti workshops, or like street art workshops. But look, I think it'd be different if I had like a group of kids that I knew really well, and I was going to have contact with them over a long period of time. It's different, but this whole thing where these kind of schools or whatever, a lot of it was council stuff, so it'd be like disadvantaged kids or kids at risk. So they didn't necessarily have an interest in graffiti at all. It was just the fact that they were kind of naughty kids that they got pushed into these programs. So then you're dealing with kids that don't even want to be there, which obviously makes it really hard. And just the contact, I guess, you just kind of seeing them like, 2 hours a week for 4 weeks or something. And then the teachers are kind of expecting them to come out of this being these amazing artists. And it's like, doesn't really work like that. Like, unless you get lucky and like one of the kids has been doing graph himself or been doing art himself on the side and just needs a kind of a boost, that's really cool. And that works really well. But if you've got kids that have never picked up a spray can before, and you've got like an hour with them and then another hour and another, it just doesn't work. And it's, I don't know, it just kind of feels a bit disingenuous to me, where it's like these councils or these schools or whatever trying to tick this box that they're like, we're supporting the youth and stuff, but you're actually like just kind of half-assed, and it doesn't really give them like it's good. And don't get me wrong, I still think they're great, and I'm just not the type of person to be running them, but it's good. And obviously it's good, like if you can just get through to one or two kids. There's always one or two kids in the group that'll kind of are listening, and you hopefully you're going to change their path and stuff like that. Like that's really rewarding too. So look, it is a good thing, and it's something I'd encourage people to do, but yeah, I'm just personally not looking into it these days. And it's just a lot of work. And I won't sleep the night before because I get so nervous about it. And
yeah, kids are tough, man. Like I used to work in a gym, and just doing classes and stuff like that, and I eventually got sort of proposition to do kids classes, kids fitness classes, and they were the ones that made me the most nervous every single time. Like a group of adults, I'll be nervous, but a group of kids, man, like, because you've really got to hold their attention.
Oh, it's so hard.
They're brutally honest.
Yep.
If they're not happy with what's going on, they'll just walk away, and you just look like an idiot.
You gotta get them straight away. If you lose them, they're gone.
Yeah, man, you got to be really good at what you do to hang around with kids.
Oh, dude, and that's it. Like, I have so much respect for people that run workshops and really do it well, and and teachers, and I have so much respect for people that do that, because man, I have struggled dealing with one kid, let alone a classroom of kids. Doing it every day, man, it would be so hard.
Totally. Well, it's good to know what where your strengths lie, and where
well, that's it. I guess, as I said, I've kind of come to this realization now where time is so important that I don't want to take on jobs that I don't think are a good fit for me, and that I'm not going to walk away from happy. So, because my time's too valuable, because my family's now important, and it's yeah. So yeah, if it's a job that I feel isn't good for me, I'll go, mate, I don't think I'm the right fit. This is who should be doing this job. But 10 years ago I was just taking everything. So it's just interesting how it changes.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of the evolution of an artist, really. You can't do the same thing forever. You're going to evolve, just like your art's evolving. You're going to involve with things that you're being involved with as well.
And look, things, how, I was saying I've separated my graffiti and my art totally, but at some point it might come back together again, and I might start pushing more jobs where I include my graph back into it, and just all based on situations and where you're painting and what you're doing. And
just going back to graffiti, because it's a pretty big interest of mine, and I've I love the art form, obviously, but you do you pay attention to the current sort of graffiti scene and things out there, or you just sort of head down in your studio?
No, I'll still look at Instagram, and I guess that's the positive side of social media these days. You don't necessarily have to get out and about to see every single thing, and you don't have to check a million different blogs to find out what's going on. You can kind of just go to one spot, and it kind of all just comes to you. But which is good and bad, because you're not out exploring and you're not going to these spots yourself. But definitely keep on top of as much as I can. But obviously things change. I've got no idea, which yard you can paint at the moment, or how much time you get,
Do you still stay in contact? Kind of speaking of that, you're part of the SDM crew. You're part of a huge amount of crews: SDM, ID, MDR.
Oh, not ID, MDR.
Not ID.
No.
Sorry, man.
No, that's good.
But speaking of ID, do you know? Because Ty's is part of SDM, is he?
Ty's is SDM, and ID is a different ID to Aussie ID. Yeah, no. So his ID crew is an English-based crew, and then there's Aussie ID crew, which is different crew.
Yeah, incredible dude, man. His art's really cool, and he's really prolific. Every day he's got new pieces up. And where did you meet him? It sounds like you met him when you moved over to London.
Yeah. So 2006, 2007, we were living there, and yeah, just painting with those guys pretty much every weekend. Yeah, it was a fun time, man. It was like I can't remember what it was. It was like 6 for a fiver for those big beers, and you get the Stellas and stuff, man. And you, mate, we'd be so pissed by like midday. It was so funny, but like, and every wall would go down like that, man. Pretty much in London, it was just a thing that we did, and it was a great time, man. Like painting halls of fame there. Yeah, so yeah, painting with all those guys, and yeah, it was just a great time. Go to the pub afterwards, and yeah, it's something. I guess it's different thing. We don't really do that here, I guess, as much. We don't finish a wall and we all go to the pub. Like it's definitely very interesting. But it was yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
So as I mentioned a second ago, obviously you're part of SDM crew. Some of the guys in that crew and the other crews that you're in as well, incredible graffiti artists, and just a lot of them are iconic, man. And they go down in history as the crew's been around for what 10-20 years now.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you still have much contact with sort of your crewmates from that time, and are they involved with art, a lot of them?
Yeah, pretty much all of them. I mean, we have like a crew WhatsApp chat thing where we all stay in touch, and yeah, I mean, we used to have like a crew barbecue every year, like Boxing Day barbecue, where we'd all get together and paint, which obviously couldn't do last year and probably not this year. Well, who knows what's going to happen? But yeah, I mean, we try and get together as much as we can. Obviously, a couple of guys have moved overseas and stuff like that, but keep in touch. But yeah, everyone else, a lot of us paint more than others, and we all go through different stages, ups and downs, and some painting more and less. But yeah, stay pretty tight, I guess. It's look, I think it's an important thing. It's something I've always felt strongly with our crew, especially it's with SDM. It was we're all friends. We're like, it's not just the graph crew chucking people in for the sake of it to boost numbers or anything like that. Like it's kind of all in it for the long haul. We've all got each other's backs, and yeah, it's nice. So you stay in touch, and it's good to see what everyone's doing. We've got guys running tattoo studios, building websites, making movies, documentaries, running wine touring, beer touring businesses. Like it's crazy the different stuff everyone does, but we've all come from that background. And something I was talking about with another interview recently was that graffiti mentality that you kind of get from being a writer and growing up as a writer, that you kind of take with you when you move forwards. And I think is something really, really cool that you get from graffiti, is this like, I guess this like desire to burn everyone else and to be better than everyone else, and to put in that extra effort to make it happen, and not rely on someone to kind of show you what to do, and just kind of go and make your own way. And I think you take that, you see a lot of that with writers that have progressed into other industries or other things, but they've still taken that attitude where, I'm going to be the best at what I do, and kind of yeah, it's interesting to see.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a bit lately because, just looking into different artists and looking into sort of your history and other people that I'm interested in, it seems that people that have the foundation in graffiti, if they stick with it and they get involved in other forms of art, as you're saying, they've got a really good base to get involved, in all different types of art. And it's almost like, as you're saying, sort of the cutthroat mentality that you need to have is really good for getting yourself out there. And if you can couple that with your work ethic and being professional, I find graffiti artists do really well in other arenas for all those reasons. And, as you said, making something out of nothing, it's really punk in a lot of ways, in that aspect of just creating something from nothing and doing everything off your own back. It sounds like that's been sort of advantageous for you in your career as well, as having that knowledge of the graffiti world.
Oh, for sure, man. Like it's something I would never give up, and it's something that was that big a part of your life is always going to influence you in the future. But yeah, I think you just learn so much. The more challenges you go through in life, the more you kind of look at things, and you can make things seem really easy if you've kind of gone through it before, or you've kind of, you know, gone through tough times. You can, yeah, always come back to that.
Well, I guess, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if you've got to wake up in the middle of the night, organize your paint, drive to a yard or whatever, a trackside or something, and do all that just to do your art, you know, doing something in a studio, you know, you're a lot more comfortable.
That's it, man. That's it. Like it's a crazy thing. What we do, what we used to do is just nuts to a lot of, like, to scope a yard for 2 weeks, to then hide in a bush for an hour and then cut a little hole and then paint something on this train that you've stolen the paint for, and you've risked that, and then, you know, you might get a photo and then, you know, it's totally nuts, the whole premise of the whole thing. So, you know, it's just that, yeah, that mentality, I guess, as we said, it's kind of puts you in this different mind state where you're just prepared to go to that next level to make things happen.
Yeah, totally, man. Kind of touching on that topic, and I won't keep you too much longer, man. I know you're a busy guy and you've got your daughter to get to, but speaking of sort of the graffiti world, something I've come to learn in my sort of older years, into my 30s, is how important mental health is with creativity. Do you put a lot of thought into sort of, you know, I guess now that you've got a kid on the scene, you just naturally start to think about how you view the world and taking care of yourself physically as well and mentally. But do you think it's kind of missing in a lot of ways? Like a lot of the guys that I grew up with, we had, you know, a lot of guys had mental health problems, and, you know, big and small, and, you know, obviously substance abuse and things like that. And just looking back, you know, and speaking to another artist, I like to get other people's perspective on this. It seems that sort of subculture is, you know, there's a lot of sort of, you know, substance abuse, as I said, and challenges mentally with getting these people sort of into a place where they can create art. Is that something that you think about nowadays, sort of taking care of your mind?
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. It's harder, I guess, now because I don't have as much time to dedicate to myself and to my own mental health. But look, it's definitely something I've become, especially with lockdown, I guess, and not having that social kind of aspect of life where you're going to events or you're doing things to break up your day, or you're catching up with mates or stuff like that. It's the art side, the creative side, I guess, has definitely become a lot more important for the mental health side of things, and having that escape and that time. I mean, for me now, Monday and Tuesdays I go to my studio, so my wife looks after the kid, and it just gives me that little bit of break, to focus, to get things done, to do some work where I can just totally concentrate on that and not have to worry about anything else. So, I mean, I didn't have that. I was trying to work from home for a lot of last year's lockdown, just because technically I'm not even meant to come to the studio because it's more than 5 k's from my house, even though I don't see a single person. But yeah, so yeah, it was really hard, and not having that separation and not being able to kind of, you know, have the family and the work thing separate. So yeah, doing this has been really important for me, and has made a big difference, I guess, for my mental health. And yeah, and just talking to people as well. You know, we've talked to a couple of counselors and stuff like that, and just it really helps. You know, especially having a kid, like it's tough, especially on your relationship, and you know, it's definitely don't be ashamed to seek help, I reckon. You know, it's becoming, I think, something that's, even in the graffiti world, you see a lot more stuff where people are making it okay, and making it not an unmasculine thing to ask for help. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally,
And
man.
I think that the more that message can be spread, the better.
Yeah, 100%, man. I would agree. I think the culture just attracts misfits in a lot of ways, and which is what's great about it. But I've seen so many guys, and myself included, go down sort of bad paths, you know, with that sort of world. And I think it's a really important thing to say. And it's really important to see guys like you that have sort of gone down this path of professionalism and artistic sort of creation. And, it's a good example for young guys getting into graffiti. And, if they're talented and they've got the drive, you can actually make something out of it. If you want to. If you don't want to, that's great. Do whatever you want to do. But it's good to have, solid examples out there in the world, man.
Yeah, definitely, man. Couldn't agree more.
Sort of speaking on that topic, aside from mental health, what kind of advice would you give to young artists that might want to think about making a career out of art? Is there any sort of general things that you can sort of say that might help people along the way?
Look, I guess pretty much everything we've touched on, really. Just be motivated, be passionate, give your all to it. Try and come up with something unique to you, I guess. And that's another thing with that graffiti mentality. It's that standing out from the crowd. You don't want your work to look the same as everyone else's. You want to do something new, something different, and just something that's something you feel comfortable with, and just experiment, have fun, but just paint. Like, I guess don't put too much pressure on yourself to come up with the most amazing thing. And for me as a graffiti artist, I spent years trying to do these crazy wild style pieces when I should have just been doing block letters and learning the structure and learning how to do graffiti simply before I tried to do crazy stuff, and ended up making my career too advanced things too quickly, and instead of understanding the basics. So I guess whatever you're passionate about, learn the background, learn history, surround yourself with it, immerse yourself in the culture and learn as much as you can, and have fun.
Yeah, that's an important point. Have fun. Yeah, man.
Because if it's not fun, then it's not worth doing,
That's right, man. For sure. That's really good advice. Well, look, man, I've got 20, 30 more questions for you, but
we can do a part 2.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to sort of end it. And I just want to say, man, I really appreciate your time. And I said it before, but both your graffiti and your sort of realism and your sort of artistic work outside of graffiti is incredible, man. And I've got so much respect for you, and I wish you all the best, man. I thank you for your time.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much for the time as well.
Beautiful, man. Just quickly though, where can people find you online?
So Instagram at DVATE, DVATE, or if you just want the nature stuff, it's Jimmy_DVATE. Website jimmydvate.com. jimmydvate.com.
Thank you for listening to the Lead Poison Podcast.